Okay, let's further expand on our if-else statement by talking about conditional operators. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these two guys down here just for now so that we can focus on just one before we expand. So there's a way of checking more than one scenarios. So for example, we can use two line symbols, and these are located right above the enter key if you hold shift, and what this stands for is OR. So for example, let's copy this and let's sort of keep this even simpler. So if we say if number 1, which is 5,000, is the same as number 2, which is 6,000, this statement is true. Okay? So what we're saying here is if number 1 is the same as number 2, which it is not, that's false, or number 1 is less than number 2, which is true, print this statement. So let's go ahead and save this and press play. And it printed this statement is true. Now the reason why is because number 1 is not the same. So this OR statement, what it does is it checks if either one of these is true. So this one is definitely not true, but this one is true. And because this one is true, it printed the statement. Okay? There's another statement that is the AND statement. And what that checks is it says that both of these conditions have to be true in order to print this. So number 1 has to be the same as number 2, and number 1 has to be less than number 2 in order for this statement to print. So let's go ahead and hit Control S, and let's play this, and we get nothing in our view. And the reason why is, again, because both of these statements are not true. So we can actually stack these within if-else statements. So for example, say we go down and we create an else if here, and we go ahead and do that, add our curly braces, we can go ahead and print this, copy this, right, print this else if statement is true, and within this we can copy these guys. And we can really get pretty complicated this, because we can say if number 1 is not the same as number 2, or number 1 is less than 2, print this statement. So we know for a fact that this isn't going to run because both of these conditions are not true. But we do know that number 1 is not equal to number 2. And or number 1 and is less than number 2. So let's actually make this greater than number 2, because we know for a fact number 1 is not greater than number 2. So let's go ahead and save this and play it. And our else if statement printed. And the reason why is we know that this is totally not working. And else if number 1 is not equal to number 2, this is true. Number 1 is greater than number 2, this is false. But it's checking if either or is true. Okay, so let's go ahead and make this less than, and let's go ahead and use our AND operator on this guy. So what this is saying, both sides of this condition has to be true, or both statements have to be true. So number 1 has to not be equal to number 2, and number 1 has to be less than number 2. So let's save this and go ahead and hit play. And again, we get this else if statement is true. Okay, so let's go ahead and do an OR. And let's make number 1 the same. Let's check if number 1 is the same as number 2, and let's check if number 1 is greater than number 2, and then let's just throw in an else statement for fun, and let's say let's just print the same thing as last time, or we can just write whatever we want, hello, and then hit Control S and go ahead and play this, and we get hello, because none of the statements above are true. Okay?